Hello, restaurant recipe lovers. Welcome back to The Daily Dish, a Copycat.com podcast where I help you recreate your favorite restaurant dishes right in your own kitchen. I'm Stephanie Manley, and I've been recreating your favorite copycat recipe since 1995. First off, I have to thank everyone who's been tagging me in their Instagram posts. I really appreciate that. You guys really inspire me to recreate more copycat recipes. Now remember, you can always find the complete written version of today's recipe on copycat.com. And we also place a link in the show notes on this podcast. That way you get all the measurements, photos, and detailed instructions. So what are we doing today? We are doing the Madeleine country potato soup. This has to be one of my favorite soups at Madeleine. It is a velvety rich potato soup that somehow manages to both be rustic and elegant at the same time. Now, I know many of you, like me, are trying to save money without sacrificing the restaurant experiences that you love. Would you believe me if I told you you can make this luxurious soup at home for about a third of what you pay for it in the restaurant? And the best part is you get a huge pot of soup that you can feed your family for multiple meals. And I really love this soup because it tastes better the second day. And if you take your lunch to work, this is a fabulous, hearty lunch that you are going to love. Now, let's talk about the ingredients. The soup is very, very simple. We're using russet potatoes. These are the same potatoes that they sell in the grocery store. The high starch content gives the soup the perfect creamy texture when blended. You will also need leeks. Don't be intimidated if you've never cooked with these before. I'll walk you exactly through how to clean them. Now, we also use yellow onion, butter, chicken broth, fresh thyme, and heavy cream. Now, I know some of you may be thinking about your waistlines when you hear heavy cream, but this little tip for customizing this recipe, you could substitute half and half or even whole milk. The texture won't be quite as luxurious, but I've had listeners write in and say they have used unsweetened almond milk with a touch of flour as a thickener for a lighter version. So you may want to try that if you like. Now, for those of you watching sodium intake, I would suggest that you use low sodium chicken broth. And for my vegetarian friends, vegetable broth works well here too. Now, let me walk you through the whole process. We're going to start by preparing the leeks. Now, here's something that a lot of people don't know. Leeks grow in sandy soil, so they tend to trap dirt between their layers. The trick is to slice them first, soak them in a bowl of cold water, and the dirt will sink to the bottom. Then you can lift the leeks out, and they're clean. This is a game changer, trust me. So another thing about leeks, when you buy them, they come in a large bundle. You may not need all of them for this recipe, so chop up what you need, and then you can take the rest, give them a quick chop, and put them in a Ziploc bag and toss them into your freezer. They freeze beautifully. You can use them in soups and stocks, and I've got a good roasted potato leek and mushroom recipe. I'll also put that down in the show notes, so you can use these leeks up completely. All right, so let's get back to the soup. All right, we've taken care of our leeks, and now we are going to dice our onion and slice up our potatoes. We're going to saute the leeks and onions in butter until they're soft, but don't brown them. You don't want to brown them because the soup has a light creamy color. This step is crucial because it really builds the foundation of the flavor for the entire soup. Next, we're going to add the potatoes, the chicken broth, the thyme, a bit of salt. Next, we're going to add the potatoes, broth, thyme, a little bit of salt, and then let everything simmer for about 40 minutes. Your kitchen is going to smell absolutely amazing at this point. Once the potatoes are tender, here comes the fun part, blending. You can use an immersion blender right in the pot. This is my preference for less cleanup, or use a regular blender in batches. Just be careful when you put hot liquids in a blender. Don't hold the lid down. Just put it on kind of loosely and start the speed at low. And you want to, again, make sure that the lid is lightly vented. I have not done this before, and I ended up with tomato soup all over my kitchen. So learn from my mistake. Then after blending, we're going to put the soup back into the pot, and we're going to stir in the cream, and you're done. You've just made a soup worthy of a French bistro. Now let's talk toppings. This is the fun part. Because this is where you can literally make the soup your own. The classic way to serve this with cooked crumbled bacon and shredded cheddar cheese on top. But don't stop there. Try a dollop of sour cream, some chopped chives, or even some homemade croutons. One of my listeners actually tops hers with roasted garlic and a drizzle of truffle oil for a luxurious special occasion. Talk about taking the soup to the next level. The soup freezes beautifully, minus the cream. If you want to freeze this, just freeze the pureed base. When you thaw it, cook it on the stovetop and add a little bit of cream when you're reheating. So it's perfect for meal prep or making ahead for busy weeknights. Something I love about this recipe is how versatile it is as a base. Again, you could add roasted garlic, some different herbs, or even fold in some steamed broccoli after blending for a broccoli potato soup variation. Several listeners have mentioned adding a cup of corn and some diced ham to transform it into a hearty corn chowder. Let me share a quick story. Last winter, I made this soup for a friend of mine who was recovering from surgery. I dropped it off with some crusty French bread, and she later told me that it was the first thing that had actually tasted good to her in weeks. That's the power of comfort food, isn't it? It nourishes not only the body, but the soul. One thing to watch out for when reheating the soup is to do it gently over low heat while stirring constantly. If you heat it up too quickly or you don't stir it, it can get a little bit gluey because of all the potato starch. You may need to add in an extra splash of broth or cream to help loosen it up if needed. Now, for those of us that count our pennies, the soup is a budget stretcher. Potatoes are almost always affordable, and you can often find leeks at a reasonable price at the farmers markets or even Aldi. I find them at a great deal at Aldi. The most expensive ingredient is probably the heavy cream, but you're only using a cup of it for a large pot of soup. Calculated out, the most expensive ingredient is probably the heavy cream, but you're only using about a cup of it for a large pot. So if you calculate it out per serving, each homemade serving costs less than $2. And, the last time I went to Madeleine, it was over $5 or $6 for a cup of it at the restaurant. So you're going to save a lot when you make it at home. Now, the final tip that makes all the difference is season as you go, but taste again at the very end. Potatoes can absorb a lot of salt during cooking, so you'll likely need to add a little bit more at the finish line to really make those flavors pop. And folks, there you have it. Your ticket to enjoying La Madeleine's legendary country potato soup without leaving your kitchen or breaking the bank. Remember, you can get the complete recipe on the blog at copycat.com, or you can click on the show notes on the podcast notes here. Now, I'd love to hear how your recipe turns out and the creative ways you make it your own. Until then, this is Stephanie Manley from Copycat.com, helping you bring the restaurant experience at home. Why go out when you can make it at home?